easiest job to do tonight, so really the applause is completely unwarranted. But it gives me my pleasure to welcome you to tonight's concert, which is sure to be entertaining and a little bit casual with the layout here, but I think a really great, intense listening and visual experience, which I always find exciting. My name's John Burge. I'm one of the organizers of this series, and I want to begin by thanking many organizations that provided funding to make the event happen tonight. In particular, Kingston and Queen's University and the broader Kingston community is really blessed to have an organization called the Ballytobin Foundation. And the Ballytobin Foundation has been underwriting rental costs for community groups to use the Isabel. And of course, when COVID-19 hit, we had to find a way to, or the Ballytobin Foundation had to find a way to provide support so this facility could still be used. And rather creatively, using the resources of the Isabel and the leadership of Tricia Baldwin at the time, a series of fundraising initiatives was put together called the Imagine Project. And what the funding provided was for events that were a little bit creative or unusual that involved local Kingston creators. So there was an Imagine grant that came to fund Dean Burry's piece, which you're going to hear tonight, The Highwayman. But part of that is that it provided funds that will record it on Thursday and Friday. So this piece will be actually released on center discs by the Canadian Music Centre. So this in some ways is a test run before they actually try and commit it to digital posterity. Also, we have the great support, as always, of the Margaret Farr Chamber Music Trust, which is a wonderful fund that is used to provide support for these concerts. As well, though, and this is very specific to this concert, is there is a fund named the Brockington Visitors Fellowship at Queen's University. And so funds were provided to bring Krisztina Szabó here from Vancouver and for her to work with our students this week as well as to present tonight's concert. And you're in for a real treat to hear her gorgeous voice in this hall and on this stage. I am certainly looking forward to that. And then finally, the George Taylor Richardson Memorial Fund has provided support for this event as well. So the last thing I'm going to do before I introduce Dean Burry, who is going to MC this concert in a manner of speaking, is just let you know that we are going to have a question and answer session afterwards. There is no intermission in this concert, so if you want to stay and participate in the Q&A afterwards, just stay in your seat. But we'll be resetting the stage, and so if you do want to slip out, if you've had enough and you want to just float away on the music, that is perfectly acceptable. But on the stage, we are going to have Dean Burry, the composer of The Highwayman, as well as Krisztina Szabó and Darrell Christie, who is the conductor, as well as Clelia Scala, who did the puppet design. And so you might just have a question that you want to ask, or you might want to hear other questions answered. So thank you for coming tonight, and do enjoy the show.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for coming this evening. As a grade 5 student in Gander, Newfoundland, I remember at the Kiwanis Music Festival reciting The Highwayman by Alfred Noye. The wind was a torrent of darkness above the gusty trees. It was very delicious language. Also, I'm sure some of you remember maybe reciting or learning that piece as well. Very much in the kind of romantic style. Some might say schmaltzy, maybe even verging on Harlequin romance. But for whatever reason, it inspired my grade 5 self, and it's a piece that remained in my head. Come forward a number of years, and I'm a contemporary opera composer living in Toronto. looking for a piece and looking for other inspiration, and quite interested in a piece called Pierrot Lunaire by a composer named Arnold Schoenberg. Very expressionistic, very German, very angular, which actually was very much at odds, I think, with what Noye was trying to do with this romantic poem. But there were undeniable connections. Both Pierrot Lunaire and The Highwayman have great themes of love and violence, and the moon certainly as well. So what I attempted to do with this piece was to be inspired by Pierrot Lunaire, and in fact, we have exactly the same orchestration: flute doubling on piccolo, clarinet doubling on bass clarinet, cello, violin, piano. I should say another inspiration that you can listen for while you're listening to this piece is a composer named John Cage in the 60s created a technique called prepared piano. So you'll notice at the very back there, if you hear some galloping sounds or you hear some kind of unusual sounds, it's because of some clothespins and various things stuck in the, yeah, Younggun, you want to give us a little? So that's why the open piano is back there. I would very much say that this whole concert, this piece, is very much about the concept of collaboration. John was kind enough to mention all the supporters and people who have come together to create this piece. Certainly I wrote it with Krisztina very much in my mind, my dear friend from Toronto for many years. Also, when I started here at the dance school and seeing the incredible colleagues that I had there, I thought, here's the opportunity. We have the instruments here. We have an opportunity to do this. Now, the funny thing about it is that when the possibility came up to do The Highwayman as part of the Faculty Artist Series, I said, okay, well, you know, there's themes of love and romance, there's murder and lots of blood and that kind of thing. So I said, oh, well, if we do it in the fall, we could do it as a Halloween show. If we do it in February, we could do it as a Valentine's show. You're still getting the Halloween show, I have to say. The next thing, basically, that I did was ask everyone, because the Highwayman's about 40 minutes, I wanted to fill the concert out with some other pieces suggested by our performers here. So the first piece that you're going to hear is by Debussy, Claude Debussy, called Syrinx, which is a piece for solo flute, written the same year, actually, that Pierrot Lunaire was written, 1912. And it's inspired by the story of the nymph Syrinx, who was... the god Pan had fallen in love with Syrinx, but Syrinx didn't want to have anything to do with him. So she magically transformed herself into a water reed, and Pan came along and cut that reed down and made his panpipe out of it, inadvertently killing what he was in love with. So the theme of love there as well. The second group of pieces you'll hear is by Alban Berg, who was a student of Schoenberg, called Four Pieces for Clarinet and Piano. And very much like Pierrot and also The Highwayman, they are short little miniatures, very much in an expressionist style, and also atonal, which means that they're not in a specific key signature. When you listen to The Highwayman, you're going to hear it go between atonality, but also kind of move back into tonality when it gets a little bit more lush as well. Finally, before we hit The Highwayman, something from Beethoven, which was about 100 years before that. Beethoven's Ghost Trio, Opus 70, was one of his middle works, and this is probably one of his best-known piano trios. And it is, the second movement is absolutely haunting, don't pardon the pun. And it kind of got the title of a ghost trio when one of Beethoven's students described it as reminding him of the ghost scene from Hamlet, and somehow that moniker stuck and it became the Ghost Trio. And then we move on to The Highwayman, of course. So here we are in February. Again, we have a night of spookiness and creepiness and bloody murder. Happy Valentine's. Enjoy.
French cocked hat on his forehead, and a bunch of lace at his chin, a coat of the clarinet, velvet, and breeches of brown doeskin. They fitted with never a wrinkle, his boots swelled up to the thigh. And he rode with a jeweled twinkle, a jeweled twinkle, his pistol butts a twinkle, his rapier hilt a twinkle, 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 under the jeweled sky. Over the cobbles he clattered and clashed in the dark inn-yard, and he tapped with his whip on the shutters, but all was locked and barred. whistled a tune to the window, and who should be waiting there but the landlord's black-eyed daughter? Yes, the landlord's daughter. His face was white and peaked. His eyes were hollows of madness. His hair like moldy hay. But he loved the landlord's daughter, the landlord's red-lipped daughter. Dumb as a dog, he listened, and he heard the robber say, "One kiss, my bonny sweetheart, I'm after a prize tonight, but I shall be back with the yellow gold before the morning light." Yet if they press me sharply and harry me through the day, then look for me by night. Watch for me by night. I come to thee. the way. He rose upright in the stirrups. He scarce could reach her hand, but she loosened her hair in the casement. His face went like a brand, as the black cascade of perfume came tumbling on his breast, and he kissed its wings in the moonlight. Oh, sweet black wings in the moonlight. Then he tugged at the reins in the moonlight and galloped away to the He did not come in the dawning. He did not come at noon. And out of the tawny sky slipped before the rise of they said, forward to the landward, they drank his ale instead. But they gagged his daughter and bound her to the field of Hernando. Then told them to take his spit with muskets at their side. There was a death at every window, and the heart of the window, for this could see through the casement the road that he would ride. They had tied her up to attention with many, many, many a cigarette taste. They bound a musket beside her with the muzzle beneath her breast. They kept watch and they kissed her. She heard the dead man say, "Look for me, my heart. Watch for me, my heart. I'll come to thee, my moonlight." Up she stood to attention with the muzzle beneath her breast. She would not risk them hearing, she would not strive again. For the road lay bare in the moonlight. Like and bare in the moonlight. And the blood of her veins in the moonlight throbbed to her lungs. Had they heard it? The horse was ringing clear. Tlot, 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 tlot. In the distance were they deaf that they did not hear? Down the ribbon of moonlight over the brow of the hill, the highwayman came riding, riding, the redwoods took to their priming. She stood up straight and still. Tlot, tlot, in the frosty silence. Tlot, tlot, in the echoing night. And nearer he came and nearer. Her face was like light. Her eyes grew wide for a moment. She drew one last deep breath. Then her finger moved in the moonlight. Her musket shattered the moonlight. Shattered her breast in the moonlight. And brought him with her death. He sped like a madman, shrieking a cry to the sky. Its white road smoking behind him, and his ring would not destroy. And his spurs in the golden while it red was his favorite coat. When they shot him down on the highway, down like a dog on the highway. And he lay in his blood on the highway with a bunch of lace at his throat.
That's a later work. Well, no, but it's just different. You know, these. Yeah, I would even stop it. So. Okay. Do we have sound? Not yet. Oh, do we?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, now I can tell.
Check. We have one over
Okay,
here.
so you guys are going to have to share one microphone, and I'm going to stand over here. But I think before we get started, I think it is well worth introducing everyone again. And indeed, you know, I think getting a round of applause for everyone, in particular, Clelia, this is the first time we're seeing you. I mean, we saw everything you did, and certainly you could tell from the applause afterwards that your contribution to tonight's show was so special, like really extraordinary. So Clelia, a big round of applause, please. And then we'll just go in order. So Darrell kept everything together, and I would say that's probably one of the more harder scores you've had to conduct this year. Is that fair to say?
I think that's fair to say, yes.
Are we going this decade?
This decade, yes.
This decade, okay, so we're up there on how much he accomplished. So could we have a round of applause, please, for Darrell? And Krisztina Szabó, we've met a few times, like over the years, but really we haven't seen each other in a long time. And I know that you have performed so many works on so many stages, and you're such a professional. So you made it sound so easy.
It's not.
Oh, yeah, okay, so we got another one. Who? Big round of applause for what Krisztina accomplished. And how can you tell I'm having fun as a composer? Because it just so works out that we've got Dean at the end. And of course, you know, it's Dean's vision and aesthetic that pulled this piece together. And I know a lot of Dean's music, and this one I would have to say was the most expressionistically intense. And certainly you get that from the Pierrot ensemble, the Schoenberg model, and there are many, many pieces for this ensemble. It has really become, you know, almost a rite of passage to write a piece for these instruments in this setup. Although usually we don't have prepared piano, which was sort of a nice touch. But big round of applause for Dean. Okay, we've got 3 mics on the go here. So I'm going to turn this over to you. Dean, when he asked me to handle the Q&A, and he said, you know, basically, if no one asks questions, you know, tread water really well. And I've been in many situations in classes where you always say, you know, are there any questions? And the one is, Yeah. When can we leave? You know, why are we going now? And I would say what I've done in the past, I should have told Dean this before, is I have a presentation I give on 10 approaches to creativity. A Canadian composer plays with a snowdrift. And what I did was, the first time I presented it, I didn't want to have this dead air for the Q&A. So I actually wrote out 6 questions that I wanted to be asked, and I distributed them to the audience. And all these students sat there for the whole time memorizing these questions. So when we got to, one student stood up and it was like the question was his own and it sounded so good and I knew the answer. It was really great. What I'm doing right now is really getting you inspired to ask a question so I don't have to tread water. So I turn it over to you, and if you're close by, I could always run the microphone to you or we can always repeat it. Someone, please, let's not have dead air. Yes, Evan, stand up, please. Or Ethan. I shouldn't even use names. Yes, please.
Hi, this is a question for Dean. I was really interested in the prepared piano they used for this piece, and I was wondering what exactly was done to the piano back there to achieve the galloping sounds and some of the other sounds that we
Yeah, the key thing with prepared piano is you have to tread lightly, right? Because you don't want to put, Cage was known for putting screws and all sorts of things in there, and so the moment you mention the word prepared piano to a concert hall, they start to freak out. So we were given permission to use the upright piano, and so inserting clothespins basically into the top 4 sets of strings gives that galloping sound, and then there's a large kind of binder clip with foam pipe insulation on the lowest fret as well, too, the lowest string, to give that kind of bass drummy type sound as well. Sometimes we're able to do it in a hall where there's a grand piano that it's all on the one piano, but I kind of liked it on the extra little upright as well, too, because it gave us an extra chance to do something theatrical. And Younggun, who is gone, he'll probably answer this question, got his calisthenics in, working like this and having to look over his shoulder. So there's something nice about having something physical about that kind of thing as well.
Yeah, follow-up question for sure. Keep going.
At one point, I believe something was put into the grand piano to achieve
That was Younggun's hand. So basically, in the movement with the solo violin, it talks about the strike of 12. So in that movement, Younggun hits those strings on the inside of the piano with the pedal down 12 times, representing kind of the chimes happening. But again, that's something which is a little less invasive, so we were able to do it on the grand piano, and it has a real big impact. Also very theatrical as well.
Yeah, keep going.
Last question. At one point, Younggun was like stomping the stage, and I was wondering if anything was there.
That was Younggun's idea, because for that very moment, he couldn't reach over to grab the low bass note, so he just thought he'd improvise. And I kind of like that.
Okay, thank you. Another question, please. Yes, over on the end.
So were all the shadow puppets made especially for this piece and the frameworks?
Yes, they were.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah. And how long did it take to make everything and piece everything together?
That's a great question. It's sort of been in the works for a really long time and has evolved. And then I don't have an answer for it because I made the puppets a long time ago. I started the storyboard. It's changed. It's evolved. And then some students started working with me this fall, which was really special, and got involved with helping me shape some of the puppets and the story, which was wonderful. Yeah, so it's been a long process. A lot of overhead projector sheets have been used, and Queens has this great stash of overhead projectors, which is so fortunate.
So are the students actually getting a course credit for this?
They are.
So good thing. So students are getting a course credit, which I think helps them out immensely. If I could just ask a question here, it's, at least when you're playing an instrument, you know mechanically what you're doing and what's going to be produced, within reason. But I would think when you're doing shadow puppetry, there's a certain element of blind faith, because, you know, you're in the moment and what's being produced, you know, you have to just make sure it works. And I just thought it flowed unbelievably well. Like, I just can't imagine it could be that perfect right at the beginning. And how do you get it that way?
Thank you. Well, we practice. We all have storyboards back there. Yeah, a lot of, oops, is this still working? A lot of, yeah, just a blind faith. Yes, puppets break. As Zoe, one of the puppeteers, said after, she said, right after, you know, death first came on, his arm came off. So, of course, but so, you know, you wing it.
And you were using sheer fabric to create the lighting effects.
Yeah, we use sheer fabric for wind and for a lot of different things.
Have you got a red thing back there to create the red?
The red, I was using lighting gels. Oh, and then
okay.
food coloring and inks to create that sort of watery look. I really like collage, so I like to incorporate a lot of different elements to give it texture and layer.
Oh, that was incredible.
Thank you.
And
Claire, please.
So, was there a visual representation the first time you performed the opera? So that was a new addition. I think, I mean, for me, having the poetry there and then you sang it, and it was just a great format. It was, you know.
Well, let me ask this question of Krisztina right now while we're here as well, too, absolutely, because, no, in the first version, and I should mention as well where this came from. John mentioned about, like, my pieces not normally have this. After 17 years of a performing as a composition career, I decided to go back to U of T and get my doctorate, which thankfully is one of the reasons why I'm here as well. But while I was studying with Christos Hatsis there, I was writing some very, you know, trying to stretch my boundaries of what I was doing, try to write different things. And a lot of the very, very modern stuff didn't quite feel like me. So with this piece, I really wanted to write something which was using the tools that I had learned, but really was still very much me. So that's why this kind of piece came around. And Krisztina, so you sang this back in 2016. You're kind of revisiting it again here now. The word that I heard over and over was hard. So I'd love to ask your thoughts on kind of approaching this piece and maybe how it's maybe changed over the last 7 years, or, you know, your approach to the piece.
How my approach? I mean, it is hard. It's hard to learn. There's Dean, the composer, did not really give me a lot of help in finding my pitches in certain places. So that becomes a matter of practicing in muscle memory for me, and for the most part, it's fairly reliable, except in a couple of movements where, you know, I make little circles where someone is playing my note in the soundscape. So if I can tune into it, then find my way back if I get off. Is my approach changed? I mean, I'm 7 years older, so there comes challenges with that.
You mean it doesn't get easier as you get older?
It doesn't get easier over time. No. It is a big sing. It's a really big sing. It's at the extremities of my voice, so that comes with challenges of how do you rehearse, still sing it in, but don't, you know, use up everything you have for the piece. So it has.
Well, although I would say there were some extraordinarily long and vibrant dramatic notes.
Yeah.
And those are the notes I think you're referring to, that
yes.
you want to sort of, you know, ease back on and just sort of, you know, pace when you're doing it. But when you do let go, it is this wonderfully dramatic effect. I mean, it controls the entire room and the ensemble, I would think, you know, Darrell, you would have to agree. And so I guess often in opera, you know, you have this ability to take time and sort of pull things. But in a piece like this, that's probably difficult. But I'm just wondering, Darrell, how you responded to some of those opportunities, in fact. I think you know what I'm talking about here.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that in a piece like this, where there is so much happening all the time, it's very dense in terms of its texture. And very, very notey. There's lots of moving parts that are constantly shifting in different time signatures and different rhythmic groupings, and so it's that fine balance between, being able to have some play with it and have some freedom, and Krisztina can shape phrases and as you say, like pace and take time, whilst also at the same time keeping the rhythmic energy and the drive through the piece, because it doesn't take much for the wheels to come off the bus when everyone is playing such complex and dense music. So yeah, it's been a balancing act, like who's leading where and which of those moments that we can really take that time, and yeah, it grows every time that we play it, and I'm sure it'll be different again tomorrow.
Well, of course, that's the advantage of going to record something after a performance. It focuses your attention like nothing else, and then now you can actually go back and draw upon that. Other question? Yes, please.
Question for Darrell, actually.
Hi, Brendan.
When you get a score like this, how is it in terms of, like, how do you come out in terms of like, preparing it, dissecting it, looking at, like, oh, these are going to be the trouble spots? Because it's so new and so unlike a lot of, and I think, I understand your background as a choral conductor, and it's unlike a lot of the choral canon that exists.
Yeah, so I think the first thing I do is look for repeated themes or repeated ideas. So are there things which are coming back which anchor the piece? So is the same musical material returning? Is the same harmonic material returning? And then looking at the overall landscape of the piece in terms of pacing. So where does the piece really move along? Which are the more fast tempo movements? Where are we pulling back? Which movements are mirrors of one another? So kind of looking at the global structure first, and then some really intense work in terms of marking things like important cues and time signature changes, figuring out the pacing between sections. So really kind of taking a top level view and then going down layer by layer. Also really looking at Kristina's part as the vocal part and looking at how the text and the melodic line fits in with the accompaniment. Where are those moments of synergy between the two, and where are those moments of counterpoint? So yeah, it's a big puzzle to fit together, and of course you never can quite tell what it's going to be like until you're in the moment and rehearsing it. But it's a very challenging piece, but something I've really enjoyed working on. The opportunity to work with these wonderful musicians and Krisztina has been fantastic, and so a really worthwhile project. But certainly it's a very dense piece of music, and it's taken some. Yeah, as Krisztina said, it's hard. But we're working on it. It's also, and I think, we're saying it's difficult, and just to say, I think it's also fantastic. And so, just to say, just to thank you for Dean for, I guess, sharing this piece with us, because it's also been a joy to work on, as well as being a challenge as well. And so, thank you for bringing it to us and for, asking us to do this.
Just to follow up, I have to say is everyone says how hard it is, everything. But I can't learn my lesson because then they do it. And they do it really well. So what lesson am I supposed to take away from that?
Rob, I think you had a question.
Sure. Darrell, you've got a lot of plays in here when you're everybody's doing their own parts, everybody's expressing themselves. I want you to think back just 2 or 3 years when you were a brand new conductor. What lesson, like if you could talk to yourself back then, what would you say to yourself was the most important thing that you needed to master to work your way through relatively simple pieces to relatively complex ones?
Ooh, that's a good one. I think there's probably 2 things. The first one would be preparation, knowing the score upside down, back to front. And with something like this, there are so many things happening, it's almost impossible to memorize. So you need to find a way to be able to find your way through the piece, and the moments where figuring out what you need to put on the page to put those markers that you need to be able to lift off the page. So being thoroughly prepared. And then I think the other one is trusting and knowing that there's going to be a mistake and recovering from it and figuring out how you can do that and staying calm in the moment. There's always going to be things which go awry, so misses a cue, entrance, I miss something. It's the nature of live performance, but how we get back on track is the important thing when that happens. So those will be the 2 things.
Yeah, I'll just sort of jump in here. One of the things that I thought was quite noticeable was the way the puppetry tracked the rhythm often. In particular, the march with the piccolo solo. I loved that, just the feet and the rhythm. But there were others, just how things were moved. And I would wonder, does that just happen naturally? But it seemed like it seemed intentional, is what I'm saying. just to track the music. So how would you do that?
We tried our best. Oh, sorry. Sorry, we tried our best. We listened. I've listened to it so many times over years. And that's part of the joy of puppetry, is to try to get the movement puppetry with music. I've done a few sort of illustrating music with puppetry pieces here at Queen's, and that's one of the things that's really fun, is listening to the music over and over and finding those points that you can sort of emphasize with puppets. Yeah, it was really fun.
Well, yeah, I would say it added greatly to the overall effect, and I think it was the question earlier, and I think it was sort of implied, now that you've done it with puppetry, I guess for Krisztina mostly, and I guess Dean, it must change your concept of the piece and its performance milieu and setup.
Well, I would, for one, would like to see it, because
Oh, of course.
I didn't see any of it because I was kind of busy, but I look forward to watching it on the. Is there a recording? There's a recording. Yeah, it's recording. So I think it. I mean, when Dean told me about that added element, I was so excited about that. It's so evocative, and just from the few little shots that I've seen online, it just looks so beautiful. So you guys are lucky. I didn't get to see it.
Well, and we're fortunate to have this space to hear every nuance that is going on musically, but also just the puppetry on the screen and the way it's presented works really well. Claire had a question, though.
I was just going to say, I always it's conceived as a song cycle, so that you can just sit, and I think you can just do it that way, and it's why there's the stops. It doesn't always kind of go on to the next section. But I always kind of imagine it as something that could be done almost like a monodrama, like could be Bess that's singing this, the ghost of Bess retelling her story. But I honestly have to say, shortly after I got here to the dance school, I saw Clelia's work, and I immediately thought this would be absolutely perfect for this. And so that was part of that inspiration as well. Yeah.
Claire.
I've just got two questions, if you don't mind. So, Dean, the first one, did you have to acknowledge the parody of Soldier, Soldier, really at all? Or was it just...
It's British Three Grenadiers.
Yeah, it's public domain.
Yeah, exactly. It's long public domain.
Oh, long public domain, yeah. Don't worry about that one.
There's actually a little Newfoundland fiddle tune in there as well. Da-da, Sally's Jig. Da-da-da-da-da-da, da-da-da, da-da. Also public domain.
Talked about what should be done, but when I was thinking about it, I was thinking about how the highwayman is actually, he's a predator, and so wanted to reflect that, and it was this treat to have this 6 minutes to play with, and I thought it would be fun to sort of introduce him because he is such a romantic figure, but he is a highwayman. So.
And we have a question over here. Oh, you're going to be surprised by this answer.
You should see what a mess it is back there. So
they did it all live.
I took before and after pictures. So there's 2 overhead projectors, and then there were 2 puppeteers behind the screen, and I was on one overhead projector, my daughter was on another overhead projector, and then 2 students were behind the screen, and so we just had to really work on timing things together.
They haven't moved anything back there. It's sort of like the magician's curtain, do you really want to see behind it? But would you mind if people before they left just glanced? Because I think you will be really amazed with how things are set up and the 2 projectors and everything lying around. There's a wonderful play, I forget the play, but it's called Noises Off, and basically it's a farce, but it's shown 3 times. It's the same farce, but you see it the first time, you know, they're doing it, and then the second time you see it, they turn the whole stage around and you see what's happening backstage, because everyone's running around to get in the right door and it's funnier than all get out to see what they're doing. And then you see it again in the third act, because the play's falling apart, and you know, like it's just the last night of disaster, and you know when all the gags are supposed to happen, but they don't. And it just kills it. Like, it's just so incredibly funny. And I'm sure it's like that back there, right?
Oh, yeah.
In rehearsal earlier, there was a moment where we were trying to discuss, and I poked my head behind the curtain. It's like all hell was breaking loose. But in the front, like, there's just so many moving parts back there, pretty much everything but a kitchen sink. And so many things moving, and you know, out here to the audience, it all looks so calm and well constructed, but it takes so many people and such intricate work. And even as somebody that's, you know, that's been around some of this work before, I was just thoroughly amazed when I saw back there earlier. So.
Yeah, so don't hesitate. Stairs are up here, just around here. Just take a little peek, and you'll be amazed. So one more question. Boy, this was great. You should come to my classes more often. I got to tell you that. One last question before we call it a night? Yeah, right back there, behind Claire. How do you make the puppets?
Oh, that's a great question. They're all great questions. The puppets, though, how I make them. So some of them were, I sketch them, or also some of the two students I worked with, Zoe and Sarah, also sketched some of them. And then I would upload them to my iPad, photos to my iPad, and then I would cut them on a private machine, so it's like it's used by scrapbooks a lot. So I cut a lot of them out, and then would add detail with an X-Acto knife after. And then a lot of it is also just printed, sort of things I sketched, and then printed out onto the overhead projector film.
Okay. Well, thank you for coming tonight. I should make a quick announcement that on Tuesday, February 28th, the Isabel String Quartet is performing a concert, and the featured work is the Brahms Clarinet Quintet. We heard Kornel tonight, and he will be returning for that concert. So, I will see you all, hopefully, on Tuesday, February 28th. Good night.